But, oh, look, the wildebeest are crossing. There's a wildebeest off to the left. It's been grabbed by a crocodile. Look at it struggling. It's trying to get back to the bank. Oh! And it's gone under. Welcome back. Thank you for joining me again on another virtual safari. And today we are actually going to check the river. Maybe this time we'll be lucky and get a bit of a river crossing, but at the end of the day, I'm just excited to be out in this beautiful place and to explore some more. So let's get out there. It looks like we may be in luck because there seems to be a fairly large herd of wildebeest waiting to cross. Not the biggest herd we've seen around the crossing points, certainly not like the last herd we saw cross, but still a good fair number of animals. But look at all the crocodiles! We've seen crocs at every crossing point, but never this many together. And watch how they're all crawling across the rocks, trying so hard to keep a low profile by keeping their bodies below the waterline. But the river seems to be just a little bit too shallow. They're having a hard time keeping under the radar. And it seems the wildebeest have spotted them now. Now those wildebeest are not keen to be anywhere near the water, and you can hardly blame them. I mean, I wouldn't stick around the water's edge either if I saw that army coming towards me. That's enough to scare anybody. But those crocodiles are still maneuvering into position, so they seem to have the idea that these wildebeest are very likely to cross today. So we're going to stick around the river for a bit, but there is another crossing point just beyond this ridge as well. But it depends. I mean, there could be crocodiles there as well, and I mean, if there's this many crocs here, it wouldn't surprise me if there's more on that side. But while we wait for these wildebeest to make up their minds, let's check a little bit further down the river and see if there's anything else around. While there are certainly many crocodiles around this section of the river, we've been here a few times before and I've never seen this many together. But I think what's happened here is maybe there were a couple of small crossings that have come through the area, and now these crocodiles have sensed the activity coming across the river, and they've all congregated here just in case they get a meal. And it doesn't surprise me that they've done that, because these crocodiles of the Mara River typically only eat about once a year. Yes, you heard that correctly. Once a year during the migration. And that is because while the wildebeest and zebra are migrating backwards and forwards across the river, the crocodiles are constantly picking off the stragglers as they go across, which provides so much food for them. I mean, if you think about it, there's millions upon millions of animals crossing the river for weeks at a time, and that's going to be the crocodile's main food source. The rest of the year, when the wildebeest and zebra are not crossing the Mara River, sure, maybe from time to time the crocodiles may catch something small if it comes down to drink at the river, but they've actually adapted and evolved to store fat in their tail. And what that allows them to do is, when there's a scarcity of food, for example in other regions, if it's a dry season and there's not that many water holes around or animals around, then they can actually use that fat storage in their tail to sustain them until they can get another meal. They're coming back towards the river. They do want to cross, but they're certainly second-guessing themselves as to whether they've picked the right spot. And and it looks like they're not going to cross right now. But there are some hippos here as well. Now, there's a pot of hippos in the water, but there's one hippo in particular on the bank closest to us that actually intrigues me more. It's lying right next to the two crocodiles. And this is interesting. I've never seen them lie this close together. Hippos and crocodiles, I wouldn't say they get along, but they certainly tolerate each other. I suppose when you both live in the water but depend on different resources to survive, it's really easy to do so. I mean, hippos being grazers, they feed on grass, whereas crocodiles, as we've discussed already, they're going to be feeding on the wildebeest and maybe even some small fish and things that come through. And there's two more hippos coming this way. But it's interesting how they're both lying in the sun, but the hippo actually doesn't really need the sun per se to regulate its body temperature, whereas the crocodiles almost entirely depend on the sun. Because they are cold-blooded, they aren't able to regulate their own body temperature, and so they rely on external sources. But most of the day, you'll find them actually on the bank in the sun. The hippos, on the other hand, are normally in the water. They might come onto the bank and into the sun to kind of meander around a little bit, warm up, and then head back into the water where they're able to protect their skin better. Because the hippo's skin, although it's quite thick, so if you were to cut down into their, I mean, in some areas it's about 1 centimeter thick. It's quite thick skin. Having said that, the surface level of the skin is really sensitive to the sun. So not only do they not want to be in the sun the entire day, hence why they go into the water, they also secrete an oil which helps to protect their skin from the sun. Very similar to a sunscreen. Look, this one's actually stood up. So it looks like the two hippos that are coming towards us are much bigger, which tells me they may be a little bit older than this one that's been lying with the crocodiles. Oh, look. It looks like they're going to interact. I wonder what's going to happen here. So they could just be greeting one another, but the fact that the one that was lying next to the crocodile stood up kind of tells me that it was ready to run in case it got chased. So I wonder if these three aren't three young bulls, and the two that have just arrived are maybe a bit more dominant than the smaller one. And so he was going, okay, if you want me out your way, I'll get out your way, but otherwise I'm going to stay here. And the other two have come in and they've gone, no, it's okay. We don't mind you being here. They are certainly checking out those crocodiles though. So I think that's because this is normally the path they would take to get back into the water. It's quite flat, it's easy to walk on. And the pod is right across from where these crocodiles are lying. But they don't look like they have any intention of moving, so I think these hippos have made the right decision in just going around them. No need to cause a disturbance. And the other one has got off and meandered off to where those other two came from. And there he flops. Just looking for a new little sunbathing spot where he's out the way. And the wildebeest are on their way back down to the water again. But this time it looks like they are headed to the other bank. So remember I said that there's another crossing point over the back of this ridge where they've been toing and froing. and it looks like they're actually scouting out that crossing point. But, I mean, the more I scan around, there's just crocodiles everywhere. And actually, they're more hidden than they were earlier. Earlier, they were quite obvious because they were moving around, firstly, and secondly, because they were all grouped together. But now that it's gotten warmer, they've started spreading out a little bit more, looking for spaces to sunbathe, and they have a sense when the wildebeest want to start crossing, and that's kind of what they're waiting for to make their move. At the same time, they are able to feel the vibrations in the water as the wildebeest start to go through. And the way they do this is because they have tiny little receptors that are mainly concentrated around their jaw and on their head, but you can actually find them throughout a crocodile's body. And what those receptors do is they not only pick up vibration, but they can also pick up pressure changes in the water. Now, we're talking minute pressure changes, which is fascinating to me, because some of these crocodiles are quite far away, and yet they will know when these wildebeest start to cross. How incredible is that? Nature really is just a spectacular thing. But it's not just the crocodiles that the wildebeest need to be aware of. If you look where those wildebeest were standing and staring out, trying to investigate that other crossing point I was telling you about, there is in fact a massive pod of hippos. At first I thought it was just a rocky outcrop in the water, but it is a huge pod of hippos. And as I've mentioned, hippos are grazers, but I've heard some crazy stories from the guides here about territorial bulls getting disturbed by the migrating herds of wildebeest and actually lashing out and attacking the wildebeest. And I suppose it's because one of their jobs is to protect their pod and all the mothers and babies within that pod. And so, because they're so full of testosterone, they're quite grumpy and they can lash out in that way. So that's one spot I definitely wouldn't be trespassing if I was a wildebeest. The wildebeest still seem very indecisive. They keep going back and forth, although they're not going as far away from the river channel now. So I think they're almost hyping themselves up and maybe giving each other a bit of a pep talk to say they can do this. But they're going to have a bit of trouble doing that because it looks like the crocodiles are also onto their movements and they're starting to get back into position. So this could be a very interesting interaction that we see here. Not unlike what we saw when that very small group of zebra crossed. That crocodile also almost got a zebra, but not quite. These guys are just lying in wait. But oh, look, the wildebeest are crossing! They're crossing at that crossing point just behind the ridge. They're all in a single file. And it looks like there's a couple of hippos there that are not too happy either. Oh, there's a wildebeest off to the left. It's been grabbed by a crocodile. Look at it struggling. It's trying to get back to the bank. Oh! And it's gone under. Oh my goodness. I did not even see that crocodile. Oh, it's back up. Oh! No, I think it's dead. It's a rather large croc that managed to grab it. Oh, sorry, wildebeest. It's never a nice thing to watch, but it is something that you almost have to be prepared for in these sorts of situations because it is inevitable. And that is exactly what these crocodiles are waiting for. It looks like most of these wildebeest have managed to cross unscathed. It was just that one unlucky one. There's still a few more coming. and there's a croc coming after them. Oh my goodness, it's coming in so fast. It looks like they got away. But here's another crocodile that clearly didn't position himself very well for the crossing itself, but it's slowly moving through the rapids and over the rocks, trying to get to where that unfortunate wildebeest was taken by one of its comrades. But I'm not so certain how it's going to get through that big pot of hippos, because it still has to navigate that obstacle, and I highly doubt that those hippos are going to just let it through. But it seems like the majority of the crocodiles have actually decided not to go where the chaos was. I'm guessing it's probably because the crossing happened too fast for them to get there in time, because they would have had to swim upriver, get through the hippos, and then still get to the wildebeest, which were a little bit further back away from the hippos. There is the potential for competition there. Obviously, we saw the crocodiles at a distance, but there was still some there going after the wildebeest. And I guess they could have been a little bit bigger than these ones are, which is hard to believe because these guys are pretty big. So they might just wait until later, but it's incredible to see the contrast between the peaceful scene that we have here with these crocodiles and hippos close to us and the mayhem that happened further upriver. Oh, it looks like there might have been 2 wildebeest that were unlucky casualties. There's this massive crocodile here who has a rather large chunk of wildebeest. I'm not sure if it's a whole wildebeest, but you can certainly see the neck, shoulders, the head. So I think it's pretty much almost the whole thing. And then on the opposite bank, there's a crocodile that also looks like it's got a chunk, but not a full body. It looks like a leg, maybe. But neither one of these crocodiles looks to be remotely interested in feeding, and it's probably because they're just too full. If my theory in the beginning is right, and the reason there's so many crocodiles in this area was because there's been a couple of crossings throughout the last few days, these guys are probably not interested in feeding. They will even stash their food for up to a week and let it start to decompose before they ingest it, because that just helps them to digest a little bit more easily. And it looks like they are not the only ones who have a bit of a snack on hand. There's a whole bunch of oxpeckers that have decided to join the hippos on the bank. I can't even count the amount of oxpeckers there are, but there are many of them. They've probably just spotted these hippos while being up on the bank. I suspect they probably came from the herd of wildebeest, and once the wildebeest dived into the water, the oxpeckers had to vacate, and now they've come to the hippo to pick at the scratches and sores, but also to maybe find a tick or two. And there's even a little agama on the rocks here, just next to us, coming out to sun itself. And the crocodile has decided to carry off its lunch, so I think while there's a quiet moment, we should probably go and make our own lunch plans.